this is the start of a new series. I titled it The Art of Vulnerability, and it's going to get real surgical, specifically surgical on myself. This series is really a product of over 10 years of going to therapy and slowly dissecting myself apart. It's a result of years of struggling to acknowledge certain realities about my past, but mostly realities about myself, um, about who I am, who I really am at the core, about what drives me, about why I am the way that I am. So I figured an introduction was necessary because what am I about to do and why am I actually doing this? What's the purpose behind it? Well, let me just tell you a few things about what I'm planning on doing. Now, I'm going to walk you through various aspects of my life and how certain experience shaped me. I'm going to expose not only what I experienced, but also my own thoughts and reflections, both as I experienced it and how I view things now, reflecting on the past. Um, I'm still growing and learning, but I like to at least be honest about what lies I have told myself, at least the ones I do now recognize, and what I believe, at least at the moment of this podcast, what I believe to be true. And of course, things might change sometime in the future. Who knows? Still in the process of discovery. So, the bigger question I think for now is why am I doing this? Why am I exposing myself in this way? I want to be clear about something. I'm not trying to explain myself to anybody or to draw and make deep connections with anybody. This is not an opportunity for me to connect with an audience or anything like that. I am not looking for people to be moved in any way or touched or I mean, you could respond however you want, right? You could be angry or dismissive. I just don't care about how you respond to my experience. Um, most of the people who know me best or think they know me best, people who are closest to me, might listen to some of these episodes and might be shocked at what I say. They might not actually have known me very well for a long period of time, or they might maybe get a deeper understanding of who I am. But that's honestly not my goal at all. I Maybe it's just me. I do sometimes feel like an anomaly because I don't know very many people who are like me in my attitudes on this, but I actually could care less what you think of me unless it actually impacts me in some, tangible way, right? Like if it prevents us from doing business where business would be mutually beneficial, like it would bother me then, I guess, but it's not because you didn't really see me or understand me. Um, so where's this all coming from? It's coming from uh, part of it, at least, is coming from my teaching, and specifically at the college level, I teach ethics, and one of my favorite topics to teach is virtue ethics. What exactly is virtue ethics? I'm not being careful about the nuances, academic nuances here of virtue ethics, but it's a, in my view, it's a holistic approach to ethics, which does not concern itself so much with doing the right thing in a given situation, right? Like we could argue about if is this the right thing to do here in this moral dilemma or not. Um, but virtue ethics is not as concerned with that. Not that it doesn't matter, but it's not as concerned. Rather, virtue ethics is concerned with just holistically understanding how you carry yourself in your day to day life, right? It's about becoming and living out a good life the best you can, right? And to live that good life, you need to identify and address parts of yourself that are keeping you from living that good life. You need to address the emotions that drive you away from, making good decisions. You need to reflect on how you care for your physical well-being and how that impacts your cognitive and emotional self, and whether or not that keeps you from living out a good life. Um, it's basically a way to dissect yourself in every aspect of who you are and trying to figure out what it is that's drawing you closer to living a good life and what it is that you're doing or feeling or thinking that is taking you away from living. a good life. Okay. In teaching virtue ethics, I saw a need to provide examples of what virtue ethics actually looks like when you apply it to your own life. This sounds easy conceptually, but one of the things I found is that just kind of thinking academically, thinking in this cognitive way through the application felt a little bit, how do you say, is lacking. It was missing something. It was missing depth. And I think the reason it was missing depth is that virtue ethics never, I think, in theory, anyways, it's not something that you get to by thinking your way to it. You can't. We're talking about all of who you are as a human being. And all of you, who you are as a human being, is not dictated by just the thoughts that you have. It's one part of it, but it's not the whole picture. Right. So the aim in this project, in part, anyways, is to model this process of reflecting on yourself, on identifying how our past has shaped the way that we view the world, the way that we view ourselves, the way that we navigate the world, the way that we make decisions. It's a chance for us to explore how these views that we have are distorted by those past experiences and how then we can attain clarity so that we could reason well, we could think and deliberate well about what to do and make good decisions, whether it's about your fashion choice or whether it's about your relationships or finances or whatever else decision that you have to make in your everyday life. Okay, the process for me involved years of therapy. It wasn't simply an academic reflection. And I think this is my personal experience with this, I think helped shape why I felt a need for there to be something in the academic sphere in teaching of virtue ethics that went beyond just the head heavy way an approach that you normally see in textbooks. You cannot think your way into a good life. That's just the reality. You can't. And in fact, this is actually built into the theory itself, right? Virtue ethics talks a lot, I mean, Aristotle, anyways, where a lot of this is coming from, for me, anyways, is, he spoke a lot about how, comparing ethics to a craft that you're, cultivating some sort of skill in, right? Like you need to do the thing that you're trying to aim for in order to get good at it, right? So living a good life, right? Practicing living a good life requires you actually practicing it to get better at it, right? It's not the kind of learning you get by reading a book. It's not the kind of learning you get just by thinking about it. You need to actually go out into the world and do the virtuous thing, or at least mimic it and try to get better at it. Just the same way that you kind of you have to actually physically, fix cars, and you have to physically, what is it, sharpen knives, or you have to physically fix whatever is broken in your home to really get a better sense of what works and what doesn't, and what to look out for, and how to just make better decisions about these things. You can't do it just by reading some books. That might be a good starting place, but at some point you need to get your hands dirty. And in the case of applying this to your own life, the way to get your hands dirty is by exploring your brokenness. It's by exploring the ways in which you are falling short of living the good life, as well as identifying some ways in which you are doing some things that are drawing you closer to living the good life. It's not a chance for you to criticize yourself necessarily. Rather, I think I take the kind of approach that has been taught to me from studying mindfulness, which is learning to be curious rather than judgmental, right? Learning to be curious about yourself, being curious about who you are, about what you're about, where this is all coming from, rather than judging yourself. Okay, so I don't want to really promote any kind of self-deprecation here. It's more a curiosity about your own self. Now, it could be challenging because you will hear judgments float into your head along the way. That's pretty normal. But I think it takes a little practice, but I think it's possible to at least withhold those judgments, even if it's just for a short period, to at least be curious about yourself. And I want to be clear about this. That I'm not trying to claim that I myself am a virtuous person and that I'm supposed to be some sort of role model for how to live your life. By no means. I am not a finished product. I am horribly broken in so many ways, and I learn more and more about just the different ways I'm broken every day, just in noticing the things that I do and how I respond to my daughter, to my students, to myself. And what I really want, rather, is instead a space for not only myself to be vulnerable about my own brokenness, but I'm trying to give you the space, if you're listening, one of my students, right? If any one of you are curious and want to try exploring yourself in this way, I want to at least open up that space by being vulnerable myself so that you can try to enter into this space as well for yourself. You don't have to share with me, it's just you could do it for yourself, but in the hopes that you can feel more comfortable doing this sort of exploration of yourself, because I think it's going to be necessary to find genuine, true, complete, full healing and growth. Okay. There's also a secondary goal. And this actually comes from a different set of experiences, specifically with helping students with their personal statements for college applications. There's something I noticed when I'm helping students out with their college applications. I would have these conversations initially about what they thought about what they thought were thinking about writing, and then they would write up a draft, and I would read it, and I would have this more often than not. Actually, I would have this sort of response to their writing, which is it. I get that you're sharing some things about you, but it feels kind of, it feels a bit dry. It feels robotic. It feels generic. It feels like just AI could have written it. It feels like there's no genuineness, there's no authenticity, there's not a real person behind these words. And for a while, I was trying to figure out exactly why it felt this way because I knew that this was the key to differentiating between an impactful personal statement and one that's not. It's this feeling of connecting to the writer, right? If you're reading a work, right, that's super important because that's what's going to dictate whether or not the reader is engaged. And the reader is not going to be engaged if they feel like they're, reading something that was written by AI. They're going to feel engaged when it feels like there's a real human on the other side and they could feel that in the writing. And I had a hard time trying to put into words exactly what this was. Um, and I think I have a better sense of what is really happening right now. I want to be fair to high school students here because this has to do with just normal human development. Okay, coupled with the educational system. Your high school years as a high school student, you probably even before high school, right? Probably spend most of your time trying to reach certain goals. And that's kind of the way the educational system is built nowadays. It's geared towards pumping out students who have achieved a bunch of goals, right? Whether it's titles in a club or grades in a class, right? You We start to define ourselves by these accomplishments, and so you spend so much time doing, constantly foot on the gas, trying to figure out, exactly how to achieve that next goal that many high school students don't spend time slowing down and reflecting on why they're doing what it is that they're doing, right? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? But more importantly, why are you going for these things, right? And answers are usually, when I talk to students, answers are usually fairly shallow, right? I want to get into a good college because I want to get this job and I want to do this work. And they could name me the titles that they want in the future, right? I want a job in this sector. I want to do this kind of work. And I ask them why. And then they say, well, because I want to help the world. It's starting to sound very generic already, right? None of it connects to something deeply personal, right? And when you're too busy just doing without reflecting on why you're doing it, you end up becoming nothing more than a shell of yourself. You end up becoming nothing more than just a collection of accomplishments. And that's why the resume ends up, feeling so dry. And I'm trying to get students to kind of connect the dots so that at least in the personal statement, it doesn't, feel dry in the same way that the resume might, right? Um, and so I, realize I need to actually prompt students to start reflecting and revealing their truest self. And unless you've actually practiced doing this, right, unless you practice reflecting on your life, slowing down, figuring out your purpose in life, where you fit into the world, why you feel like that's your place in the world, right? Unless you ask some of these deeper questions, right? Not just like, I like to do this, but actually, why do you like to do it, right? Do you like to do it because you were pushed in that direction, or is there something about the thing itself that you really like, right? Like if you enjoy playing a musical instrument, right? Do you actually enjoy it, or do you like it because you're good at it, or do you like it because you think it'll help you get into college, right? The why here is what gives us, that, the readers, anyways, a sense of, oh, we're dealing with a human here with real feelings that are stemming from a real life, that has connected to some deeper, meaningful experiences that they had, right? So unless you actually ask yourself these questions, or maybe had these sorts of Q and A's with your, friends at some point, with your peers, and had these deep conversations late at night, if you didn't have that, then this will be a new way of not only writing but also thinking and feeling. Like this is just, this all will all feel very new. Which is no wonder that when it comes to the personal statement, it's their first time writing a personal statement in the way that I ask them to write it, right? Okay. Um, so what I'm saying is this, right? Like, look, it's not necessarily that something's wrong with you or that you suck at it. That's not. I don't like to promote that way of thinking, just because I don't think it's true. I think it's a skill set like any other. Writing a personal statement is different than writing, let's say, a business correspondence, right? And it requires the writer to be a little bit more in tune with themselves. It requires students, who have learned, anyways, and again, it's a skill that you could learn. How you learn how to be open and curious about yourself, so that when you're prompted by someone else to talk about yourself, you can do so in a way that feels very much like your truest self. Right? You're revealing something about, what makes you tick, right? Not just the list of things that you've accomplished, or like your specific goals, tangible goals for the future. Those are all well and good, but where's that deeper humanity underneath? You're able to reveal it if you have a better sense, a better understanding of who you are. And that requires you to just simply take the time to be open and curious about who you are, right? To do that kind of reflection. So, this series is meant to guide specifically my students, past, present, and future. This is for my ethics students who want to see what virtue ethics looks like when you actually live it out in real life, or at least you try to, what that practice would look like on a day to day, week to week basis. And to the high school students that, I've worked with and will work with in the future, who are wanting to write a personal statement that is actually engaging. The way to be engaging is to be authentic. And to be authentic, you need to first know yourself. You need to know who you are. So I'm providing these examples, as a way for you to, as a way to kind of prompt you to reflect on your own life, in your own way. It's not about me here, even though I'm sharing my experience, but I would want for my students to hear the way in which my thoughts and feelings, my experiences, how they all kind of come together into a more or less cohesive story, and whether they can practice doing that for themselves so that they get a, you know, deeper understanding of themselves, about what they come from, about where they're going, and why they're moving in that direction. My guess is that they're all connected, right? Our present self is, at least in part, a product of our past self, and our future self is shaped by what we do today. So I hope that you can take, this series of, stories as a way to kind of prompt your own reflections. And I hope that you find them to be fruitful. And at the end of the day, more than anything, if there's anything I could wish for you, it would be that you start to fall in love with yourself. Not judge yourself, not, being, contentful of yourself, or not be smug about yourself, but just simply love yourself as you are. And from there, hopefully, you could find freedom, to do, move, to guide yourself, going forward in the way that you genuinely would like to go.